We're live. We're live, my friend.
What?
For all 69 subscribers. Nice.
You
For
really did
all
not warn me.
No, I didn't. That's okay. What did you want to talk about?
Bottoms?
Yeah, okay. You ready to start
Do
the
you
podcast? Or did you I
do you
meant
want
like
to talk about bottoms?
did you have a thing that you wanted to talk
Oh
about?
no, I meant like the sexual position.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah, let's start the podcast. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Nerd Squad, where we're two nerds who are also best friends and we talk about whatever we want to talk about. In this case, you're listening to Nerd Squad Reviews, where we talk about movies and TV and stuff like that. My name is Sarah Kaplan,
And
and I'm
I'm
here with,
Scott Wise.
and that is Scott Wise. And Scott, we've known each other since we were in 6th grade.
That's as far as I can remember.
Yeah, and if we knew each other before then, neither of us remembers that, which it raises questions. So we prefer not to think about those questions. Don't want to unlock any repressed memories. But Scott,
I don't know. That sounds kind of fun to me. It's like the point of
repressed.
therapy, right?
That like used to be the point of therapy until everyone realized that the unlocking repressed memories thing was overall a sham, and the therapists were like implanting fake memories of satanic assault into people's minds.
Oh, we don't want to live through fake traumas?
No,
Oh, okay, I'm there.
no.
I'm with you.
But that's actually pretty relevant to my thoughts on the movie for today.
Reliving
So
fake traumas.
yeah, so without any further ado, let's introduce our film for the day.
My
Scott,
favorite topic of conversation.
it is true. Scott, what movie are we talking about today?
That would be Bottoms.
Bottoms by oh shit, what are their
Emma
names?
Seligman.
Here we go. Emma Seligman, Rachel Sennett, Ayo Edebiri, or Ayo. I'm not actually sure because I'm a hack and a fraud.
Yeah, we're not
And
professionals.
we're not professionals, and
Don't correct us.
don't correct us, please, unless I. Oh, actually, when it's like her name, you can correct me because I do want to
Yeah,
know how
that's
to
fine. That's
pronounce it.
fair. I think it's Ao Edebiri.
Is it Ao?
That's what I've heard, but I could be wrong. I know you have some hot takes on this movie.
I
I
don't see
already
them as
saw them
hot
on
takes,
your
but
Instagram story.
you
So
you saw them loosely. Yeah. Okay. So we watched Bottoms. We're Scott and I are both queers. For reference, we are both queers. Scott is
I'm a cis gay
mostly
man.
a cis gay man. I'm a trans queer woman. Yeah, trans. So I'm a trans woman, and sexuality wise, I don't know. It's loosey goosey,
Fluid.
uh,
It's cool.
fluid, pan, whatever. Um, so that's why we're trying to focus on queer movies for now, because otherwise, like, what do we have to contribute? We're
Or
like,
at least we're adding a queer lens to movies and media and giving you thoughts that are in a range of LGBTQ ideas.
right.
And Bottoms
Um,
is pretty explicitly queer. I mean, you take a look at the history of high school and college movies, and there's not a lot of them about two openly queer female friends.
right. And my question is this movie about that? And the answer on one level is objectively yes. The two characters are pretty openly lesbian. Um, but okay, so spoiler free review up top. Scott, you want to just do what we did with Saltburn and just kind of walk through the plot as we talk about it?
Yeah, this one wasn't quite as easy to parse into individual pieces, but I will say there's quite a few similarities that I found between this and Saltburn. Interestingly, we picked two related movies that both came out this past year that are both very queer and set in a time of a person's life where they're exploring and they're questioning and they're guessing things and they're really just looking for acceptance and love. That's what a lot of this movie was about. You're shaking your head. What did
I disagree.
Okay. No, I think we're gonna disagree more about this movie
Yeah,
than the last movie. I think
it's
I like this movie quite a bit more than you
it's
did.
interesting that you say that they're looking for acceptance and love when, at least in the case of Rachel Sennett's character, she's explicitly just looking to fuck. Like, she expresses no interest in love or acceptance or a relationship or anything like that. Like, the whole point of her character, as I understood it, was to just be a lesbian version of the, like, super bad archetype, like the male high school comedy film archetype of just the person who doesn't want to finish high school aversion.
Hmm. No, that's fair. I think in general, a lot of it was about acceptance, and I'm thinking about the entire club.
Yeah. I
But
think it's
I think you hated Rachel Sennett. That's what.
I hated her character, and I think it's a hard movie for me to parse because the movie is so thoroughly saturated with, like, irony poisoning that it's hard to say what the movie actually believes or wanted to say, in my opinion. Like, to the extent that the universe the movie takes place in is objectively absurd, and, like, and I mean that if you haven't seen the movie, you might not know what I mean by that. I mean that it's like it's a super heightened reality. It's like Wet Hot American Summer, which the director referenced as one of her influences, where, like, it's in no way a grounded world. The things don't make sense. Like the star football player at the high school, Jeff. There's basically a cult of personality around him. There's posters all around the high school talking about, like, get horny, get horny for Jeff. There's reference to this big rival football game that seems to be the one football game that they play. Like, they don't play any other football games. Like, the world is absurd. Like, I mean, in a literal sense.
Yeah, it's taking high school movies and it's extracting a lot of the realism from it and just giving you the extremely comedic version of what these movies are like. It's have you seen Not Another Teen Movie?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about Not Another Teen Movie over the course of this, where it's
It felt
like,
like that in terms of the way that they wanted to portray high school, which is um, an absurdist version of it. And my favorite part about this movie was the one-liners. I wrote down a lot of lines that made me laugh out loud.
yeah,
So, from your perspective of like, what was this movie trying to say? It's a good question, and I want to explore that more. My take on it was this is actually the second time I've seen it, and it made me laugh just as hard the second time as the first time I saw it. And so I left the movie thinking that was fun and queer and wild and wacky and weird in a way that I enjoyed.
yeah. Um, I and we'll get to that. I just like
We should probably like lay out the movie.
last note on the setting because I think it's interesting. Like, I think you're absolutely right. Not Another Teen Movie or the Scary Movie franchise. Like, that is the kind of world that we're in. Like the pure distilled absurd essence of trope and parody, except that the plot and the main characters are not that. Like, the side characters are. Jeff, the football player, and his best friend are, but Ao and Rachel Sennett's and Ao Edebiri and Rachel Sennett's characters are not. Like, those are meant to be. They're presented as kind of real people, sort of, and, like,
Mhm.
they are more like they feel like they're out of the universe of a movie like Superbad, where they're meant to be like maybe Superbad's like kind of absurd. It's a movie, it's heightened, but they're still like real people. Whereas the protagonists in Not Another Teen Movie are themselves just as heightened and pure trope archetype as the rest of the world. And so there's like a weird dissonance between the story and the characters that are presented as though it's like a normal movie, and then the world around them, which is presented as spoof. Um,
Yes, and to me, I read it a little bit as like these two main characters are giving you their lens of what high school is like, almost
mm,
like a fabled version of them remembering high school because clearly they're not in high school anymore.
mhm.
So what was it like to be in high school from this impressionistic standpoint
Interesting.
as someone who was not the jock or not the hot girl or not the nerd. They're kind of just like the normal people. Hence the name of the movie. They're the bottom of the totem pole because they don't even have a classic high school archetype to fit into.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that interpretation of it. Something about that feels off to me with this movie. Like I enjoyed that in Under the Silver Lake, for example, where there's a lot of weird stuff going on where you're like, okay, I'm seeing the world through this person's mind and like I can get that. Um, but in this case, I don't know. We'll talk about it when we get to stuff. But okay, let's get to the plot. Sorry, I've held that up too long.
You do it.
So we have the very first scene. We meet our two main characters. We meet our lesbian best friends, who at no point in the movie express any interest in or sexual tension between each other, which I just thought was interesting to note. Um,
Why did you think that
and
was interesting?
why? Um, Not that you can't have two lesbian best friends who have no interest in each other. Um, it just seems like something that I would expect a movie to comment on it in any way. Like,
Hmm.
we're not attracted to you. We don't want to ruin our friendship. We're both bottoms and we're looking for a different dynamic. Like, just some reason. I don't know. I just found myself like, these two lesbians are so fucking desperate to have sex. Why don't they
Why
fuck?
don't they just have sex with each other?
Yeah, that's
The
what
thought
felt
never
weird
crossed
to
my
me.
mind, but that's hilarious.
Right, when you have like two straight man best friends doing this dynamic, that makes sense because they're not interested in each other. When you have two lesbians, like imagine they were two gay men, like two gay boys who were both like, "Ugh, why can't we find anyone to fuck? We're just so desperate. We're so horny. We're so desperate to have
They would
sex."
totally fuck each other.
They would fuck each other. And so yeah, watching this movie, I was like, okay, the whole narrative impulse is that they're so desperate to fuck, they're so horny, and yet they have each other right there.
I think that you watch the movie through PJ, who is Rachel Sennett's character, and I'm more interested in Josie because I think Josie has a completely different narrative arc and a different set of goals in the movie. And when you say like they're just in it to fuck, like that's
I'm
kind
talking
of
about
true.
PJ, yeah.
But like like you're right. That's how they talk as a group of friends. But Josie's in it because she's in love with one girl.
Right. As I like I wrote a little Instagram post about this, but as I noted, like I liked Josie a lot more than I liked PJ.
And I think that's intentional. I think you're allowed to write a character that you because Rachel
Yeah.
Sennett wrote the movie. She helped write the movie, and she wrote an unlikable character.
Okay, and we'll get that's a huge part of my thoughts on the movie, which we will get to. Okay, continuing the plot. They are two lesbians. They want to fuck and they can't. They have a pretty classic dynamic. It's the Michael Sarah, um, the other guy whose name I don't remember, who sucks.
Jonah Hill,
Y- Jonah Hill. Yeah, I was like, you know the guy, the one who's like emotionally manipulative towards his surfer girlfriend,
because of
uh,
therapy.
because of therapy. Yeah. Okay, so they have sort of that dynamic. Like PJ Rachel Sennett is the Jonah Hill, like the kind of aggressive, like pushy one, and Aoda Beery is Michael Sarah, the more of the mild mannered one who is being pushed by her aggressive best friend. They find themselves at a fair where they try to talk to the two hot girls and they totally embarrass themselves because they don't know how to talk to girls. And I don't know. Okay, here we enter my first disclaimer is not the right word, but even though I often identify as a lesbian now, um, I didn't grow up as a lesbian. I didn't have that experience. So like there's stuff to me that felt like inauthentic or wrong, but I didn't have that experience growing up and the director of the movie who is gay, like she might have. So as with any movie that explores identity or sexuality, like I can't come in and say like that's wrong. but I can just say it didn't resonate with my understanding of the world or human dynamics. Um, I seem to have lost Scott. Oh, there he is. But
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay, I want to hear what your thoughts are, because
My thoughts were the movie was following the beats of a Superbad so closely that I felt like it kind of ignored the fact that the main characters were lesbian for a good part of it. Like it felt like a straight movie where the main characters were girls.
Have you seen Booksmart?
No. Oh yes, I have.
This reminded me a lot of Booksmart because I think you're right. Superbad is the touchstone that all these movies really go back to. Booksmart is a commentary on Superbad. It's the same plot with actually Jonah Hill's sister in it as one of the main characters, Beanie Feldstein, and I forget the name of the other actress, who are trying to not be virgins when they go to school, when they go to college. They're in it though as the nerds. They're like the us characters who were top of the class and were so focused on academics that they never had sex, and so they don't want to be virgins going to college. And it's this like, what if Superbad was two women, and what if one of them is gay?
Yeah.
And so there's a very similar plot line there. The gay character is a lot like Ayo Edebiri's character, where she has this one crush, and this movie is kind of like, what if it was two of them? And what if they weren't nerds? What if they were totally normal people who had nothing to offer? They were just kind of there.
Yeah, except that they're not normal people. Like, can you tell me anything about either of these characters? Can you tell me, like, outside of the story elements, anything that they value, that they're motivated by, that they like, that they're interested in?
Now that you mention it, no.
They're not characters. They're not people. Like, they're tropes.
There's no development.
There's absolutely
I don't even know if they're tropes.
They're not. Well, they're
kind of
not
like vessels.
Yeah, they're not even tropes. Like, they're nothing. Like, they feel more like people when you're watching it because both of the actors are good at bringing personality to it. But when you like try to sit down and think like, what do they care about? Who are they? Are they smart? Are they good at school? We don't know. We have no idea. Like, are they nerds? We don't know. What do they value? We don't know.
No, you're right. As soon as they start to get attention from girls and they start to amass friends, they take on the personality that they think those people think about them.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, your audio just changed a lot. What just happened?
My audio keeps fucking up.
Oh, your audio sounds good right now, though. What happened?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, anyway, we'll keep going. Yeah, so that was one thing watching it where I was like, I just don't like them. Like, all we know about them is that they're bad, manipulative people who are lying to try to, like, fuck people. In the case of PJ, or in the case of Josie, was, like, totally on board, even though she acts reluctant. Like, she's totally on board to just, like, make up insane levels of lies to try to get the girl that she has a crush on, even though she's never talked to her.
Yeah, Josie Ayo's character goes along with the lie that she was in juvie over the summer and that she killed a girl, and that the girl was resuscitated and brought back to life, but that she was dead for a while. And she just goes with it. That becomes her personality, that she's this girl who went to juvie.
And her crush on, I don't even know any of the characters' names because none of them are people.
Isabel is her crush, played by Havana Rose Liu.
Her crush on Isabel.
Brittany is PJ's crush, who's played by Kaya Gerber. Yeah, and I actually think that these two characters were the best characters in the movie.
They were the best. And okay, so this might be to an extent, like, again, everything is, especially when you're talking about anything queer, it's your own experiences. So, like, I've never in my life had a crush on someone that I didn't know. Like, the trope of crush on Isabel without ever having had a conversation with her, without knowing anything about her or what she's like, to me feels like high school movie trope, but not a real life thing.
And I'm a very shallow person, so I've had that experience many times.
Yeah, but like, I don't see anything like romantic or pure or anything about love in that. Like, to me, that is still a form of pure objectifying lust.
It's lust, yeah. You fall in love with someone
Right.
because they're hot.
Right. So when I say that, like,
That's
they're both
relatable.
sure, but when I say they're both just in it to fuck, and you're like, Josie wasn't, then I'm like, but yeah, she is, because
Yeah,
she
no, you're
doesn't
kind of right.
know her. Like, she thinks she's hot, and she mistakes her lust for something deeper. And it's like, still like, that trope is pure objectification of women. And if this movie had two male characters as the leads and everything else were the same, people would hate it, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's pure misogyny and objectification, but because the two main characters are played by women, then it's like, oh, it's not misogyny, it's
Subversive.
queer.
So you're kind of saying that this movie feels like a missed opportunity. Like the
The-
setup was all there of two queer lesbian friends. You take the tropes of other high school movies, you blow them out of proportion and make it impressionistic, but then actually tell a story about how lesbians
Right.
fall in love.
Exactly. Like, to me, this movie keeps getting called queer. It's called queer representation. It's called finally a movie for the queers. Like, that's what all the headlines are. And I was really
Mhm.
excited for it because a lot of queer reviewers that I like were like, yeah, it's so queer. It's great. And then I watched it and I was like, this isn't a queer movie. This is a
Fascinating.
heterosexual movie that has the veneer of lesbianism.
It's funny because as a man, I did not have that experience, even upon second time watching it, because I related. Like I said, I've had this experience many times. I fall in love with someone because I think they're hot, and then I get to know them. That is a extremely masculine way to approach the world.
In my opinion, it is. And
In
like,
mine too.
but I know lesbians who liked this movie and related to this movie. Like, I don't want to, if you're a lesbian or you're a queer, if you're a non-man identifying queer person out there and you're like, but I like the movie, I'm not trying to say you're a fake queer. Like, this is just my takeaway from it, was I did not at all feel represented in this movie. I saw in all of the queer relationships, queer dates, and queer community I've been a part of, I didn't feel any of that coming through. This felt like a complete recreation of male gaze, misogynistic, super bad tropery that was like decorated as queer. And so to that end, I want to get to the. We keep not talking about the plot because there's really not a plot. Okay, the plot.
I can summarize the plot in like 30 seconds.
Sure, yeah. Spoilers for plot.
Okay,
If
great.
you haven't seen Bottoms by now, it's not like it's a new movie.
Yeah, it's not a new movie.
Yeah.
So these two best friends, they want to have sex. They specifically want to have sex with these two
Cheerleaders. Hot girl
and,
archetype.
And so they start a fight club.
Yeah.
They get
they call it a self-defense club with like, there's this one girl, Hazel, who's like, yeah, like the self-defense, like Hazel's the only like kind of real sincere person in the movie, but it's played off as a joke because she's like autistic and doesn't understand sarcasm. And she's like, oh, self-defense club and female empowerment group, that's great. And then PJ is like, you don't get the point of this at all, but then just like parrots those talking points to try to seduce girls she thinks are hot into joining the club. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, basically that's it. Hijinks ensue. They kind of get closer to the girls. One of them is successful in going to bed with her crush. The other one tries and she gets spurned because she's straight.
Yeah.
They get outed as liars. All the girls in their club thought that they were ex-juvie people. And so when the football team outs them as lying about it, all of their friends turn on them. And then the culmination of the movie is at this football game where these two girls, Josie and PJ, realize that the other team is trying to kill Jeff, the quarterback, the one who throws the ball. And so they do everything in their power to stop it from happening. And I actually don't like the ending.
Yeah, for some reason they care about saving Jeff. For some unclear reason, because Jeff objectively sucks and they all hate him. They
There's some
end up
silly things about pineapple juice, and then all of a sudden they win. They fight using
They-
all their self-defense tactics. They kill some people.
they murder the enemy football team.
It goes totally off the rails. And
Yeah.
in at the time I was like, okay, the tone of this movie completely just shifted. But
Yeah.
realistically, the absurdist nature of the movie was there all along. They just kind of brought it to this culmination in this very 2024 horror trope kind of way, where a
Yes.
lot of movies end in horror or like
Yeah.
body horror or whatever, because those are the kind of movies that make money.
And because nobody's doing okay right now.
And genre doesn't exist anymore.
But
you completely
they
change the genre of your movie halfway through.
But the characters get their happy ending. PJ, who's an objective piece of shit, awful bastard person.
Sarah hates PJ.
I hate PJ. I really hate PJ. She's awful. Like, she does nothing redeeming over the course of the movie. PJ ends up like at least making out and implied like maybe going on to have more of a relationship with Hazel, the one like sincere queer girl in the high school.
Is
who
that
she
what
never
happened?
even what?
Is that really what happened?
Yeah, Hazel and PJ make out on the bleachers.
Oh, as the distraction?
It wasn't as the okay, it was like as the distraction, but it wasn't really. Like they were trying to get the cheerleaders to make out as the distraction. PJ makes out with Hazel. It ends up being kind of a distraction.
Oh, okay. That's funny because that's again, I've watched this movie twice and I never understood that part. In a way, that is the queerest thing about the movie, because she's realizing that she actually wants to be with another person who wants her back, aka another lesbian. She finds one.
Yeah, kind of. Or she just wants to kiss someone. It's really unclear. Like it just kind of comes out of nowhere. There's absolutely no reason for Hazel to reciprocate that feeling. PJ has been nothing but abusive to her the entire movie. But they make out, and then Hazel seems happy about it because it's a movie, and she's not a real human either. And then Isabel, the hot girl who had sex with Josie under false pretenses. Josie had told a long-term series of insane lies in order to get close to her and then have sex with her. And Isabel was like upset for a while, and then at the end, instead of being like you're an insane manipulative psychopath, she was just like, you didn't have to start a fight club to date me. You could have just talked to me. And then they make out, and it's like, why did you forgive her? Because she just killed someone? It's totally unclear.
That reminded me, the other touchstone. We talked about Superbad, we talked about Booksmart. The other pretty important one is Fight Club.
Fight Club, yeah.
Fight Club itself, I think, is a huge inspiration for this movie. What I think a lot of people forget about Fight Club is that the Fight Club part of it is like very small, and then it gets to Project Mayhem, and then things totally go off the rails. That starts to happen in this movie too, where they egg the guy's house and then they actually end up blowing up the car.
Hazel blows up the car.
Yeah.
And again, it's like because she's autistic and they're just like pitching stuff to do. And she's like, oh, I could start a bomb. And PJ's like, yeah, Hazel, great idea. Let's do a terrorism, which Hazel then interprets as, yeah, let's do a terrorism, because she doesn't understand sarcasm. And so she blows up his car, and it doesn't end up really mattering, I guess. The club gets disbanded as a result, kind of, for unclear reasons.
Yeah, the ending to me sort of paralleled the ending of Fight Club, like all these buildings blowing up, this thing blowing up, and then him getting the girl.
Right. The man always gets the girl, and in this case, Josie, the sort of soft butch lesbian, gets the hot high femme girl.
Right, for no reason.
Which still plays into like male gaze heterosexual archetypes. And that male gaze is scattered throughout the movie. Like when PJ and Hazel make out, we're not given a queer lens on it. We're cut to the men. We're cut to Marshawn Lynch and the principal, and we're cut to men saying like, this isn't as hot as I thought it would be. We're cut to Jeff, the quarterback, saying, did porn lie to me? Like, the movie does not ever present a lesbian gaze on anything. It presents the male gaze on queerness. which is weird because it was written by 2 women.
It reminds me of the cheerleader routine,
Right.
which lasts for all of 10 seconds, and it's just one of them getting
The
water
wet
poured on her
t-shirt
white
context.
t-shirt.
Which, like, on the one hand is like, I guess you could argue it's like a criticism of the misogyny built into cheerleading or something. But it doesn't engage at all with like the experience of cheerleaders. Cheerleading is actually the most dangerous high school sport played in the United States. They suffer incredible injuries. Cheerleaders are amazing athletes who are extremely committed to their sport. And the cheering for football players, for like top-notch cheerleaders, is barely a part of what they do. They have their own competitions. And like, instead of this movie engaging at all with the experience of like the girls who do cheerleading, it was like engaging instead with the male lens version of cheerleading.
Sarah, I'm learning a lot, and I intentionally did not put a rating to this yet out of our 1 to 37 star rating,
Right, of course.
because I saw yours, and so I know what it's going to be. And I was curious because I went into this thinking, well, I definitely like this movie more than the last movie we watched, which I believe I gave a 24 or 27 to, or something like that,
Which was Saltburn.
which was Saltburn. And so this movie, I was like, well, it's definitely going to be higher than that. But through this conversation, I'm changing my mind. I'm lowering my score a little bit, because
Yeah.
my experience of this was that it was really, really funny.
It is funny. It is funny. I don't want to take that away from it.
I laughed out loud many times, and most of them, like, I wrote down my favorite lines.
Yeah, I
Most of
want to
them
hear. I
are
want to
from
hear
PJ.
your lines.
PJ, I thought, delivered the best lines.
Can we
And
hear them? Can you read off the lines you liked? Sorry, finish your point. But then I'm just curious to know what you.
I feel like we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the word faggot.
Which, yeah, I totally want to talk about.
Because one of my favorite lines was, "I got faggot number 2 this time. You're the sidekick, not me."
Yeah. So actually, like, on that topic, I don't know if you saw that after my post about what I thought about the movie, I then followed it up with polls where I asked people on Instagram. I don't have a lot of followers. This is an incredibly informal thing.
And it was small.
Very small. But I found that scene really weird. It put me out of the movie because I was like, wait, I don't think lesbians get called faggot in this way. Or it's not like the go-to slur. And it was like implied that they're always called this. And it's also in the context of a school where the movie tries to lay out up front that these girls are hated because they suck. Because
Not because they're gay.
At one point early in the movie, one of them is like, no, it's not because we're gay, because like that gay guy is treated well. And then like we see 2 AMAB or male queer characters in the course of the movie. And one is a throwaway line of proving that the school is not homophobic because the cool skateboard guy is complimenting the gay theater guy on his performance. So the school isn't
What's
gay.
the other gay character?
We'll get to him. He's a separate point. The school isn't gay. The school community is the school isn't homophobic. The school community is not homophobic, except that they write faggot on these girls' lockers repeatedly. I don't know. What do you think about that? As I said, I was surprised because to me, faggot is a term that specifically as a slur is used to refer to like gay men, trans women, or genderqueer AMAB people. Or I also think faggot is used as a slur against like trans masculine people. But I think that's often insofar as they are perceived as assigned male at birth people. Like it's a term used to indicate that you are failing at masculinity.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
pejorative in that way.
I was going to say a lot of straight men. I think it gets used mostly towards straight men to kind of tell them, to communicate to them, you're acting unmasculine.
Gay. You're acting unmasculine.
So you better stop crying or dancing or whatever.
Right.
styling your hair or putting dildos up your butt or whatever makes you gay or whatever is perceived to be unmasculine. That's what faggot means. So it's a really interesting point that your our two hated characters as out queer women are labeled faggots.
And not even super butch. Like Josie kind of dresses in, like nondescript jeans, hoodie vibes, but she's not butch. And PJ is like high femme. Like,
I mean, to your point, I don't even think butch lesbians are called faggot. That's
yeah, I think they like can be, and just I do want to acknowledge the results of my poll here. Okay, so I basically put out 2 polls. This is imperfect for a lot of reasons, but I think the results are interesting enough. I put out one that was asking my AFAB queer friends, my assigned female at birth queer friends, were you ever called or labeled a faggot growing up? And I had I had 4 people vote yes, 2 of whom were trans women who misread the prompt. So I had 2 AFAB queer friends say that they had been called faggot growing up, and then I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 say no. And then I did the same question, but for AMAB people, in which I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 AMAB people, a mixture of gay men, non-binary people, and trans women, say that they'd been called faggot growing up, and 2 vote that they had not. And for the record, I didn't ever get called a faggot growing up. I have since been called a faggot, but
I didn't get called a faggot growing up either. And now, as for those of you who don't know, I'm the chief operating officer of Nasty Pig, which makes gay men's clothing. We use the word faggot differently in a very reclamation of the term as a term of endearment for.
And I use it all the time.
Yeah.
As a reclaimed word, I use it all the time.
Me too.
And what it felt like when I watched that scene, what I felt like I was seeing was like a queer woman director who, for the record, is young. She's like 28. And she would have been like 26 when she wrote this movie. She said she started writing it in college. It felt like a queer woman using the term faggot in the reclamatory way, but in like, she was like, I can use it to make this joke because I'm queer. But then I was like, can you? And to me, the question comes down to whatever the facts of her experience were. Like, if the director comes out and was like, I was called a faggot growing up, then I'll be like, that's your word to use and tell this joke.
To bring it back to your overarching point, though, that this is a movie that's not queer, it's just presented as such in the marketing and in the denotation, but not in the connotation of what happens. It's almost the same thing where they're using a word that they know will make a laugh. I thought that line was really funny. I got faggot number 2 this time. You're the sidekick,
why wasn't
not
it?
me.
Yeah, why wasn't it Dyke?
Why wasn't
to
it
me,
Dyke?
It should have been
It's
Dyke.
because, going off of your thesis, that the movie is being presented to straight people as queer, and so it's allowing them to laugh at queer jokes.
Right. It's allowing them to laugh at this queer slur. And
because the 2 main characters let it roll off their back.
Yeah, they don't care. It's and I think the whole movie has this very like kind of edgelord approach to comedy, in my opinion. Like,
can you explain the word edgelord to me?
Yeah, so edgelord is an online term for people who are like like guys on like 4chan or Reddit who are like they use things being offensive. They're like pushing the edge. They're on the edge of what's appropriate as their comedic language. And then if you call them out on it, they're like, oh, it's just a joke, bro. You're so sensitive. And it's proof that like they're cool, that they're irony pilled. They don't take anything too seriously. They're not genuine and sincere and thus cringe. And to me, that's what it felt like. It was like the cavalier throwing around of a term like faggot, which, like, again, to be clear, I use in a reclamatory way in my own life all the time. My girlfriend and I call each other faggot all the time.
Yeah, like
Um,
I use the word all the time too.
but it's like a term that I use as a trans woman in community with other trans women, but like it's not a term that I use for the benefit of cis people or cis het people, which is what it felt like this movie is doing. As you said,
Right.
it's
It
giving
use
the
it to
audience
make them feel like they're a part of this language and like they
right.
can be a part of these jokes. There's another joke that I wrote down again that I thought was funny at the time and maybe second guessing it now. Over the PA system, they say, "Will the ugly, untalented gays please report to the principal's office?"
Yeah,
And then it's very
and it,
clearly those two characters, PJ and Josie. I thought that was like now that we're talking about it, a little strange.
yeah, and
Wouldn't you
again,
assume
like
that they're talking about men?
when the movie
Why
went
did they
out of its way,
absolutely assume that it's these two?
right? When the movie went out of its way to tell us that the school community is not homophobic, which it didn't have to do. The movie chose to do that. Um, yeah. So I
The
so in it, in
principal tells them, "Just stay in your lane until you're munching beaver at Wesleyan."
yeah, like
Okay,
there's a lot
again,
of
another objectively funny line.
but a lot of just queer phobic jokes that are presented
Exactly.
in a way that's like, oh, you can laugh at this queer phobia. We're over it now. But we're not. In fact, we're in some of the worst, most dangerous queer phobic times of our lives. And like the other thing about faggot on the locker where I'm like, this feels wrong, it would be dyke. Like, if this is gonna happen, if this slur would be written on their lockers, it would be dyke. And that's like, this just doesn't feel like a queer movie. It doesn't feel like a queer experience. It feels like someone writing a movie about queers, which gets me to Rachel Sennett, who has very cagily refused to answer any questions about what her sexuality is.
And why do you
people
think that is, Sarah?
why do I think that is? Because I
Does it have
think
anything to do with her first movie?
I think maybe it has maybe something to do with providing plausible deniability if anyone wanted to say criticize her on the movie that she co-wrote and starred in as a horrendous, unlikable, predatory lesbian.
I learned from you a couple days ago that Rachel Sennett, star of Shiva Baby,
Shiva Baby too. Yeah.
is not Jewish.
Not Jewish.
I assumed as the star of Shiva Baby she was.
Right.
Also written by Emma Seligman. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Who is Jewish.
Who is Jewish?
But it's interesting that Rachel Sennett is making a career as an actor playing a Jewish person who's not Jewish as a queer person who may or may not be queer.
I mean, and look, okay, I'm gonna say people Emma Seligman had this quote where she's like, look, I'm gonna read the exact quote because honestly I think it's kind of bullshit and I want to call her out on it.
Go off, Queen.
Thank you. So yeah. She says basically in reference to this question, she was asked, what are your thoughts on authentic casting for LGBTQ roles? It's a really important conversation to be having, and it's nuanced, but I find it tricky in that it's illegal in almost any other context to ask your employee what their sexuality is. It's lovely when you know someone is queer publicly and then you cast them in a queer movie. It's wonderful that their fans get to see them in that role. Kristen Stewart playing queer characters means a lot to a lot of people. At the same time, it's unfair to assume that someone is straight when they haven't publicly or privately told you what their sexuality is. We speak so much about coming out as being a private journey and everyone should feel comfortable taking their time, but then we put pressure on public-facing people to give us an answer. And that's also kind of the defense that Rachel Sennett has given of like, this is personal, it's private, you shouldn't be asking me. And to that, I say, that's bullshit.
Bullshit.
Total bullshit. Like, it's true that it's illegal to ask your employee what their sexuality is. but that's not their relationship.
But you wrote and are starring in a movie that is being marketed as queer comedy, playing a queer character. I'm sorry,
Right.
you're a public figure. You have a little bit of responsibility here.
And Emma Seligman, Rachel Sennett isn't your employee that you would be inappropriately asking about their sexuality. And she's certainly not my employee, if that's what you're implying. Like, you co-wrote this movie with this person who is your friend. You know whether or not she's queer, right?
More importantly, she's writing jokes about faggots.
Right. She's making faggot jokes for herself to deliver. And if she's not
I think
queer,
we deserve to know.
If she's not queer, that's a problem.
Exactly.
She is writing movies about, again, predatory lesbians who are what is the word where you can't stop lying? Compulsive. A compulsively lying predatory lesbian whose entire story is manipulating hot girls so that she can try to fuck them. Right? Which is literally the anti-lesbian
No, I'm with you.
fucking propaganda for the last 2 centuries.
I think that the conversation around queer actors playing queer roles, I personally believe that they should cast queer actors in queer roles.
100%.
I think that it is possible as a identifying straight person to be somewhere on the spectrum, to have had queer experiences, to be able to act as in the role of a person,
right,
and keep some of it. If you are employed as an actor, that's your job. A writer, is a different story.
A writer, a star,
Ayo Edebiri, I don't know her alphabet. I bought her character, full stop, and I'm not going to worry about it. Rachel Sennett wrote this movie. It's different.
Rachel Sennett wrote this movie and just didn't feel like a lesbian to me. The way she played the character, the way the character was written, it felt like Rachel Sennett wanted to tell edgelord queer jokes and wrote a character where she could do that. And then she hides behind well, that's actually my private life. Actually, it's totally okay for me to make a movie. Yeah, Ayo is queer. Not lesbian, but queer. And Rachel has only publicly dated men and then refuses to identify what her identity was. And I don't think it's bad to call her out on it because, again, you're making a movie that only serves to reinforce negative, dangerous stereotypes about queer people in a time when queer people are being politically targeted and this exact kind of rhetoric is used to harm real high school queer people. And then to say, like, well, that's actually personal and private. It's like, well, unfortunately for me, when stuff goes out into media that like reinforces negative queer archetypes, that ends up affecting me. And I'm actually not like a public figure. There are 3 people watching my live stream here. And if you're willing to make a movie that engages with like queer phobia, that makes light of queer phobia, that uses it as fodder for comedy, you have to be willing to discuss your sexuality. Or otherwise, why are you writing and making this movie? It's not your movie to write and make.
My score just keeps going down as you talk.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, like, even if Rachel Sennett is queer, even if she is secretly the most lesbian-y lesbian who ever lesbianed, like, until she's ready to engage publicly with that, I don't think it's her movie to publicly make.
Mm-hmm.
And also, even if she were, like, that just, to me, that adds to it all feeling icky as I watch it. But even if she were an out and proud super lesbian, I would be like, dude, you've like fucked up with this one. This is not the time to make this movie. If you wanted to make Superbad, you should have made it in fucking 2008. Superbad's bad. Like, that's the thing to me. Like, we all know Superbad's bad, right? Like, the misogyny in Superbad is bad. The problematic tropes are bad. And to be like, well, I wanted to make Superbad, but make the main characters lesbians, but not at all engage with like what's problematic about it, really. You're just making a bad movie. You're replicating it.
Right. You're not fixing any of the problems of Superbad. You're actually perpetuating them and potentially
Right.
making them worse.
You're perpetuating them, but you're putting them in the Trojan horse of like progressive queerness, but it's comedy. Anyway,
Can we talk about something that did work for me?
please.
Because to be fair, 16 out of 37, you're like almost at halfway. Halfway of 37 is what, 18 and a half?
Yeah, no, I
So
didn't.
so you didn't objectively hate this movie.
There were things that I thought the movie did well.
Okay, like what?
Well, but you said you wanted to talk about things that worked for you. I want to hear that.
Okay, I don't know if this is my favorite part. Here's something I thought worked well. I thought the costumes and the wardrobe, told a very interesting story and served as fodder for humor at various points. I think we got a lot of characterization from the hairstyles, from the costumes. It was interesting and deliberate to put the men in football football gear for the entire movie. They never changed. From full football pads. As someone who unfortunately played football for 5 years, those things are extremely uncomfortable. You want to take them off as soon as you put them on.
Yeah.
It's really gay. You're wearing big shoulder pads and tight see-through white pants and jock straps. I'm surprised not more football people and baseball people are gay, because you're just asking for it, really.
Right. I mean, there's that line in the movie when they're like, enough of this gay shit, in reference to PJ and Hazel making out. I want to get back to that hot, sweaty man-on-man grappling action.
Yes.
Right.
Football is gay, to be clear.
Yeah, and we all know this. Football is one of the gayest sports out there.
So men in football costumes the whole time. Then the women, the two main characters, in drab, beige, browns, greens, oranges, compared to their love interests, who I would like to talk about a little bit, because I thought that was another successful part of the movie. Havana Rose Liu as Isabel. I had never seen her before. I thought she stole the movie for me. Her in extremely feminine pinks, whites, blues, along with Kaya Gerber, played by Brittany. Do you know who Kaya Gerber is? Had you ever encountered her before?
No, she's a model.
She's Cindy Crawford's daughter.
Okay.
Cindy Crawford.
And Cindy Crawford is
a supermodel from the 90s.
Okay.
And she looks exactly like Cindy Crawford, like she did when she was.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, she looks like a supermodel.
She looks like a supermodel, right?
Yeah.
And the clothes that they put her in were ridiculous. Yeah. Only something that she could wear. All these pants with holes in them, crop tops that literally no one can pull off, crazy hats, and yet she looks hot the whole time.
Yeah.
She has a jewelry business, as she reveals. So I thought those two characterizations were really interesting. And probably my favorite scene in the whole movie is where Isabel is in Josie's room, and Josie's trying to hide her knickknacks and tchotchkes that make her look nerdy or less cool. And Isabel looks down at something and she says, "Aw, I always wanted one of these, but my mom said it would hide my shape." And she pulls up a gray sweatshirt.
Yeah. I thought that was a funny line.
This hot girl not being allowed to own a hoodie.
Yeah. There was like there were also a lot of like eating disorder jokes early on
there were a lot of eating disorder jokes. I did not think those were funny.
I didn't think were funny at all. Yeah, I didn't think they were funny.
That goes back to the thesis about masculinity. That's what a man thinks is a compliment to a hot girl. Oh, it's a Napoleon Dynamite.
Right.
Oh, I see you're drinking 2%. Is that because you think you're fat? That was literally this joke. You could eat the bun on your hot dog if you wanted to.
Yeah, and just like making fun of her, assuming that she's anorexic. Again, PJ is a bad person. PJ is a bad person, and there's nothing redeemable about her.
I think she talks about her as bulimic.
Oh yeah, bulimic. Yeah,
and then Brittany basically says she is.
Yeah, it to me it's just like, yeah, it just gets back to that irony poisoning, like cringe edgelord humor. Yeah, so I agree. I thought the movie at a technical level was actually really good. I thought it looked great. I thought the costume was good. I thought it was filmed well. Um, some of my favorite parts of the movie, like there's a lot of attention paid to detail in this movie. I loved
There's a lot of
everything.
visual gags, like on the
Yeah,
chalkboard.
everything on Marshawn Lynch's chalkboard I thought was funny. I thought he had some funny lines.
His Amelia Earhart
His Amelia
mon-
Earhart,
monologue was really funny.
yeah, the like him being. What I didn't like about his character though is again it didn't know what it was. Like on the one hand, he is this like send up of men's rights activists where he's like, why did Amelia, all those men died, men go to war, I'm obsessed with being a divorced dad. But he's also like the only one at all trying to engage with real feminism. Like he assigns them to read about bell hooks, and then like our
That being
girls.
said, he does have a trivia question on the board that I would like to ask you. I don't know if you
Oh,
know the answer to
please! I
this.
don't think I saw it.
Feminism, who started
Oh,
it?
yeah.
A. Gloria Steinem.
Uh-huh.
B. A man. Or
Sure.
C. Another woman.
Yeah. It's a really good trivia question. Ooh, baby, that's tough. I'm
I
gonna
think
have
this
to.
movie wants you to choose B.
The movie is not a feminist movie. The characters are not feminist,
But it thinks it is.
and they're not. They're not like not feminist in a way that's criticized either. Like they're dismissive of bell hooks, and that's like a joke. But the movie's also not clear on whether or not you should be dismissive of bell hooks. It's just a throwaway line.
Right, but invoking it makes you believe
Yeah.
it's a feminist movie.
Right. Like everything else, it's just these constant evocations of things.
And look, we growing up as Nerd Squad participants, Quizbook participants, we got very good at using references and names to make you think that we knew what we were talking about.
right.
So we are the number one and two people who can cut through the bullshit and be like, that's just a name. You actually don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it didn't
But
engage anything at all.
You're not engaging in feminism just because you mentioned the name bell hooks.
Right. And the fact that the only character in the movie who's even prompting people to read bell hooks is your objectively misogynist men's rights activist. And then your female characters your girl characters are like, oh, we don't care about bell hooks. Yeah. Anyway, but technically I thought the movie was good.
For you?
I thought there were some funny lines here and there. What worked for me, I really liked the football players. Jeff didn't do it for me. I didn't really care about Jeff. I didn't think he was a good villain or that interesting. But I liked his best friend. And mostly what I liked was just the background football players. Like, I like the fact that when they're at practice, they're not playing football. They're just like kind of running around and tackling each other. Like, I liked that.
Those were good visual gags.
Like, I think this movie, insofar as it was building this not another teen movie world, I thought it did that well. I thought the visual gags on Mr. G's whiteboard were funny. I thought the fact that there was absolutely no way to tell what subject he was teaching, like his classroom had like presidents, it had a periodic table, it had like, he was just a teacher. I thought that was funny.
There was a visual gag at the football game, and one of my favorite line readings when they're like, "Oh, like nothing weird is going on here. There's no one on the other side," and then it cuts to the other stands and it's completely empty. And Josie goes, "Nobody's even over there. That is obviously a red flag."
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I want to get to the second gay man character. You don't know who I'm talking about.
I'm racking my brain. I can't figure it out.
Okay, what if I referred to him as the school shooter?
The guy drawing in his notebook at lunch?
Uh-huh.
Why do you say he's gay?
He comes up a few times. He's not ever explicitly labeled as gay, but he's played, to me, quite gay. And we see him in. I remember him having like 3 real scenes. He has the scene where he's drawing in his thing at lunch, and then something like the football player throws the fruit cup, it hits him in the head, and then he's like, "That's it. I wasn't going to," but then he says like, "Plan bomb school." That comes back at the end of the movie when Hazel's 15-minute instead of 15-second timer has gone up and exploded the tree. He is there holding a remote detonator, and he says, "That was supposed to be my thing," which is like a school shooter joke, funny. Um, but he appears one time before then. He's in the class in the scene where they're going to do the Marshawn Lynch says, "The Holocaust, it happened," and then he gestures at this kid, and I don't remember what his name is, but he gestures at this kid and he says, like, "No, it happened." Like he's implying like this kid's a Holocaust denier. And but in that scene, the kid is wearing a choker, like a classic like leather metal ring choker that like trans girls wear, not alt-right school shooters. Like that's
Well, it's kind of
queer.
goth, right?
It's queer goth shit. It's queer goth shit. It's BDSM puppy girl shit. But like not alt-right. And it's like that conflation of like the queer goth archetype with alt-right, school shooter, Holocaust denier archetype. I did not like.
Mm.
And again,
I
was
didn't
like
know.
this.
I didn't notice the 2 other times you mentioned, but I definitely remember the "I'm going to shoot up the school," like him drawing in the notebook, and thinking that was irresponsible. That was an
Right.
irresponsible joke of them to throw out a school shooter joke like that.
Yeah, and a Holocaust.
And now when you bring up the other parts in which he's included, as well as the general movie and your thesis for the movie, that's a word I would use to describe this movie. It's irresponsible.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe it wasn't intentional, but to me, when you put a kind of one of your few man characters who isn't a football player, you put him in the classic leather choker collar with the metal O-ring. That to me is indicator of minimum twink femboy goth vibes, but also in my experience, like a super common first accessory for trans women. Like you are putting him in that position, whether explicitly or not, of effeminate man, trans woman territory, and saying Holocaust denier, right wing school shooter archetype. And that's like one of your 2 queer men in the movie. It's not a queer movie. It's not a movie that cares about queer people. It's not a movie that cares about like trans women or trans girls' experiences. Like I probably wouldn't even recognize them as real. If you had some, to me, it feels like if you had a trans girl in the movie and PJ, if a trans girl tried to join the Fight Club, which the movie doesn't even try to engage with, but if it had happened, PJ would have been like, I want puss, not dick. Like that's just the kind of movie it would be. I don't know. Maybe that feels wrong. Like obviously I'm putting words in the movie's mouth there, but that's just yeah, same things, thematically all the same. I just irresponsible, wrong time. You could have told a really interesting movie dissecting the not another teen movie high school super bad tropes in the context of queerness if you'd wanted to genuinely engage with it. If you'd wanted to actually try to communicate what the experience of a lesbian in high school was like. Oh, there are a couple background trans women in the Fight Club, says Azzy. I'll have to go rewatch that then.
I have 2
Okay.
questions for you, Sarah.
Yeah.
First one, do queer movies have a higher bar?
Yes.
Why is that?
I've thought about this is something I think about a lot. I'm like, people are like, well, but like cis people can make dumb comedies, right? And I think queer people can make dumb art. Queer people can make pure comedy. What queer people can't do in their comedy is do something that potentially endangers other queer people or feeds into right-wing rhetoric right now. It's not a time I think, when queer people could do that. Like, read the room, I guess.
Do you think queer media has to cast queer people in a positive light?
No, I don't. I think there are lots of bad queer people. Like, there are 100% bad lesbians out there who are manipulative, liars, and abusive and such. But why choose to focus your movie on them? Like, you can have a nuanced, serious queer story that wants to engage with that. You could even have a comedy that wants to engage with that if you do it with nuance. But this
But
movie,
then PJ would be a different character.
yeah, PJ, this movie has no nuance. Like, this movie presents itself as like, these are the archetypical loser lesbians at the school, right? There aren't cool lesbians in the background. There's like Hazel, but I don't know.
My other question, which is related,
Sure.
you mentioned that your favorite part of the movie was the football players.
Yeah.
This is a recurring theme this year when it comes to Barbie, which was my favorite movie of 2023.
Which I haven't seen.
Much of the conversation around Barbie was about how the most successful part was the Kens.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Gosling is probably, he has the best chance of winning an acting award at the Oscars for the movie for playing a dumb bro, while the women are presented as complicated, having to do all these things all at the same time in a very meta way. It's interesting that the men are the ones who are getting the accolades.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something similar going on here where these women who, maybe this is not the best argument to make about this movie because they're not presented as complicated figures. They're actually presented without nuance. I think that the hot girls actually are presented as more complicated women. That's why I think they're the most successful, because they have characterization and there's something about them. So to say that the most successful part of the movie is the men, it rings like the first question, which is, are queer people, are women held to a higher standard? And how do you feel in relation to I know you haven't seen Barbie, so maybe you can't comment on it, but the discourse going around is pretty similar.
Yeah. I think that discourse is pretty dumb. It's just really hard for me to care about because the Academy Awards don't matter. And they are like, no one who knows anything about the film industry actually thinks that the Academy Awards are a commentary on whether or not a movie is like a high quality piece of art. Like, I live in LA. I'm tangential to the entertainment industry. I have lots of friends who are actors or in the industry. And it's not even like an open secret because it's not a secret. Like, the Academy Awards are bought and sold and they don't matter. And like the people who get upset about Barbie and the fact that Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig didn't get nominated, to me, that's like, they make the exact same mistake that Barbie does, which is mistake feminism for like liberal capitalist white feminism. And like the biggest feminist issue isn't that Greta Gerwig, the rich fucking director who directed the highest grossing movie of the year, didn't get nominated for a fake award.
Yeah, or that the most beautiful woman in the world, a white blonde woman,
Right.
didn't
Just
get nominated
like
for Best Actress.
the movie Barbie, the corporate commercial for a for a toy line, isn't a piece of feminism. Like, it's a piece of studio approved feminist veneer designed to sell tickets and toys.
Okay, you haven't seen the movie.
Am I wrong?
It is that, but it is also
Oh.
a mega entertainment $1 billion grossing movie that presents its thesis at the very beginning, which is that what if a society of women, what if we had a matriarchy?
Right. And what's the answer?
There's an all-female Supreme Court. Women can do anything. Women are proud of their. There's a lot of subtle little jokes throughout that are hidden in this advertisement that is meant for populist appeal and meant for anyone in the world to watch. And that's why I found it so successful. I think you can say nuanced, interesting things, and if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
I like lots of stuff that's just shit. Like, I'm totally happy to go sit and watch a big budget superhero movie. The only reason I didn't go see Barbie is because I can't afford movie tickets to go to theaters because I'm broke. Like, I didn't resist it as an act of anything. Yeah, nothing against spectacle. I'm just saying spectacle isn't feminism. Like saying, "Ooh, what if there were an all-women Supreme Court?" Like, okay, fine, that's an interesting like sci-fi question. What if? Tell me, what if we're in a matriarchy? But like, does the movie have anything to say about it, or is it like a
It presents it as like obvious. It's like,
that it would
well,
be better?
women have to do so much that we obviously would succeed to this degree, while the men are dumb and need our attention. So it's the very
Right.
premise of the movie that makes you start to question, what is the society that we live in? What are the assumptions that we make about the male gaze? Bring it back to this movie because we're not here to
Sure.
talk about Barbie.
Right.
But I do.
I mean,
I
we
did.
can. We can talk about whatever we want. It's our podcast.
It's our podcast. I did think that there was a lot of similarities between the way that the men were presented as these one-note dumb jocks who
Yeah.
still have the attention of the entire school. They're still revered as the most important, all that. Whereas the women are being. I didn't understand the part of this movie where like they had to start the fight club because there was violence towards women. Did you understand that?
Yeah, let's see. They hit Jeff with their car, but not really. And then they end up in the principal's office for beating up Jeff because of the rumor.
But
And
there's
then they-
something in the PA system that's like there was an attempted violence.
Oh, that's the enemy school. The Golden Ferrets are going around like raping and murdering good
women. Got it.
Because
So,
the women or children are weak and being picked off by the enemy.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think the movie makes sense or really wants to or cares about anything. The movie like gives enough face value to the premise of the movie is, what if two lesbians start a fight club so that they can get nice and sweaty and wrestly with hot girls that would otherwise be out of their league? That's the premise of the movie. And everything else to get there is movie math, you know? I can't hear you. Oh. No, sorry, Scott. You're still gone.
How about now?
Oh, you're back. Okay.
All right. We can edit that out, right?
Yeah, we can.
Like I said, I'm getting audio equipment to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
I think we should watch Bros. Have you heard of Bros?
God, Scott. Sure, let's watch Bros. I've only heard bad things about Bros.
We're not only watching good movies.
I know. Let's watch Bros.
I want to see a movie marketed the same way as Bottoms.
I would also like to watch the Barbie movie.
I would definitely do Barbie. I love Barbie.
Okay, we'll do Bros next.
Bros was marketed as the first big budget gay rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
You've never seen a rom-com with two men. And it's not true. Every gay has seen plenty of movies that they grow up watching on HBO where their parents aren't around of two men making out.
Yeah.
They find every movie under the sun they can of two gay men.
Right.
So the argument of like, yeah, sure, Judd Apatow has never made a movie about two gay men. Okay, what's the big deal? It kind of shot the movie in the foot because the expectation was so big. Like we put so much money behind this, and therefore we're marketing it this way so that we
That's
can appeal.
Billy Eichner, right?
Billy Eichner. So you can appeal to a mass audience. What's interesting about Bros and why I want to watch it and talk about it is the gay men who I've heard who watch it say, oh, it's actually really well written. It's really funny. It's pretty accurate about a lot of things that happen in gay culture and gay dating, but they marketed it so poorly because they were trying to make money off of it. And so they had to appeal to non-gay people to come see the movie. And what they ended up doing in the meantime was making straight people not want to watch it and also turning gay people against Billy Eichner and his movie. And now he's unbankable. No one will hire him. I randomly run into him all the time. He's like just always there.
Wow, you run into Billy on the street?
You could say that. I have run into Billy on the street, on the boardwalk, on in a pool in Mexico,
on Grindr,
at a Coachella
Equinox?
set. I'm like, wow, Billy, why are you everywhere?
Do you know him? Does he know your name?
No.
Okay.
But I've literally run into him 8 times. I'm not kidding.
That's very funny.
It's weird. This movie was marketed sort of similarly, which is like, this is a queer high school movie. It's extremely queer. And it found success with the mainstream.
Yeah.
I've heard critics and podcasts talk about how much they like this movie, but those are straight people.
Right.
And what I love about our conversation is that having watched it as in my identity as a cis gay man, none of this stuff really raised red flags for me as I watched it. Even the second time, I laughed out loud because it was humor that I could identify with. Your reading of it is so interesting and really takes the wind out of the sails for me of this movie. It makes all the jokes feel airsats. It makes it feel, that word keeps coming back to me. This is irresponsible of them.
Yeah.
To put out a queer, such a movie that had potential to reclaim a narrative or to tell a queer story of two female friends who are lesbian in high school and what that's like. There have been other movies that have done this. 13 does this. Blue is the Warmest Color does this. That movie with, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
There's lesbians in fucking everything now. Like, if you want your movie to be like, lesbians are set dressing now to indicate that your movie takes place in the 2020s.
There's a really, really bad lesbian Christmas movie that's called
Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, with Kristen Stewart. It's like The Happiest Season or something.
Yeah, it is a really bad movie, but it's not irresponsible. It's just
it's not irresponsible.
Movie.
It's just a bad movie. It's like you have lesbians who wrote it, who are playing lesbians, who are talking about the experience of going home to your family on Christmas as a queer person after they may know you're queer, but they've never seen you with another person of your own gender or whatever, or a queer mate. They've never talked about it. You don't really like put it in their faces, and like having to confront it over the holidays is a unique experience. Do I think the movie was good? No.
No,
but
was
it irresponsible? Absolutely not. I would never call it
Was Kristen Stewart really fucking hot in that movie? Yeah, she was. Did Kristen... And the reason that movie was bad is, again, because they were trying to tell... They were trying to do a straight movie.
Yes.
They were trying to tell a heterosexual story structure and swap in lesbian characters, and it didn't work.
They were using just like Christmas time narratives of like, you've seen this movie before, you know how all the beats are going to work, but surprise, it's lesbians.
Yeah. And the end result is like in that movie, which we should just watch and do at Christmas time. But
yeah,
like the reason I think it's interesting again for Bottoms, and I think it's good that you brought it up. Like they took an archetype, they took a heterosexual archetype of the Christmas relationship movie. They made it lesbians, but they didn't engage with how that would actually affect the story. They gave this like... the bottom line is the reason that movie is bad, and the reason every lesbian I know hates it, is because Kristen Stewart obviously should have ended up with Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it follows the story archetype and she ends up with like her toxic partner who wanted to hide her and stay closeted. That's straight culture.
Hmm.
Yeah, Kristen Stewart and Aubrey Plaza had real chemistry. Aubrey Plaza was the one who was like actually gay and was like, "Hey, that girl's gonna hide you. She's bad. She's ashamed of being gay." And like we have great chemistry and we're both really hot and cool.
Every actual gay person knows not to date a closeted person.
Yeah.
If you tell me I'm not out to my parents, I'm sorry, I'm not interested.
You're not ready to date.
Yeah,
Sorry. It's like
I
one
was
thing
there, and
it's one
trust
thing
me,
not
you
to have
didn't
a
want to date me when
relationship
I
with your
wasn't out to my
parents.
parents.
Like it's okay for queer people not to have a relationship with their parents because some parents are never going to accept you. But that's different from asking your partner to deny themselves and asking your partner to go back in the closet in order to
Exactly.
appease the cishets. And this, I felt like Bottoms does the same thing. It just like crams queer people into this heterosexual story archetype that doesn't work.
And that doesn't actually tell you anything about what it's like to be a lesbian in high school.
And again, tell me a single thing that PJ or Josie care about or are interested in. Sex.
Not even. It's like
Not even.
conquering
Yeah.
the hot girl.
It's just not being a virgin, which to
Which
me,
I also don't think is like a thing that a
I don't think lesbians
queer
have that feeling.
girl would do in high school.
No. I'm being informed by my friend in the chat that there is a trans woman actor who's in the background in the Fight Club, which is great. So I'll recant that the movie wouldn't engage with that, except that the movie still didn't engage with it. She's not like acknowledged as trans, and we don't see PJ's reaction to there being a trans woman because PJ's only interested in the hot supermodel, because she's kind of a shallow bitch. But and it's okay. Like also, it's okay for high schoolers to be shallow bad people. That's fine. Like high schoolers often are shallow bad people or they're figuring themselves out. Like they're not bad people, but like they're not developed yet, and that's okay. The problem is that the movie made by two adults isn't like presenting these high schoolers with that awareness. It's just presenting them.
Yeah, and if it had been an arc where one of the two main characters thinks that that's what she should do, and then she realizes that she should be at, it almost gets there, like you said, like she ends up making out with Hazel, but they never actually say at the end, like, "Oh, I was wrong. I shouldn't be going after hot straight girls. Like, I need," It also has two characters who are essentially doing the same thing, and I think that there's such a missed opportunity for Ao Edebir's character Josie to push back,
Yeah.
say this isn't actually what I want, or who cares if I get to Sarah Lawrence and I haven't eaten pussy.
I just don't think lesbians care about that.
I
don't
don't
know.
either.
It's in it, and these two can care about it, but it's just presented as the lesbian story,
Like
the
the lesbian's super bad, and
finally the queer representation when it's not. It's like a very specific representation of two shitty people.
yeah,
And
it definitely is marketed as the queer high school experience, and it is so not that.
It's very much not. And the last thing I want to say, just loosely about it, I'm really uncomfortable with high schoolers are young. And I find it really hard in general to engage with high school movies that are so sexualized about high schoolers, which is tough because high schoolers, as humans going through like a period of sexual awakening, are sexual. And like, it's not that those aren't valuable stories worth telling or that can be told in ways that are good. But when you have a bunch of like, when you have Rachel Sennett, who's like 26 or 27 in the filming of this movie, and they costume her, and she has like huge tits, and they put her in this thin shirt where you can like see her nips, and she's got like they're hypersexualized when you have these hot girls who are portrayed as hot, played by mid-20s models, and you have your like the cheerleader routine where they take the hot cheerleader and they do a wet t-shirt contest. And like on the one hand, you can say it's ironically engaging with the fact that like high schoolers are always played by hot actors in their mid-20s and 30s, except that the movie doesn't acknowledge that. It's just replicating that. And like I really get grossed out with the sexualization of high schoolers because I work professionally with high school seniors and they're young. they're,
Children.
they're so young, and this movie like doesn't. The movie is like just not. The movie isn't critical of the sexualization of high schoolers, even if they would like maybe pretend it is as a defense that they're like engaging with that. They're not. They're just doing it.
Yeah, no,
And
I think you're right. And I think that the two writers of the script wrote funny one-liners and didn't really consider what they were doing with it,
yeah,
and that
it's
it
just
could
it's
work
not
at
a
a
thoughtful
stand-up
movie.
set or on a podcast, but as a movie, you're gonna have a lot of people watch this and take away the wrong message from it.
To me, the premise of two lesbians start a fight club in order to get close to girls would be a really funny 4-minute long improv bit.
Mm.
And even then, I can guarantee you that if like the queer improv team that I'm on did that as a bit, like there would be more engagement with what it meant and what it was communicating than happened in this hour and a half long movie.
Should we rate the movie?
Yeah, I already gave it my rating publicly. I said 16 out of 37.
Has this conversation changed your rating at all? You're allowed to change it. This is the official rating, to be clear.
My official rating, I really don't think so. Like, I guess we are building what these numbers mean. I'll lower it. Fuck it. Fuck this movie. I don't like it, and I think this movie takes up space from better and more thoughtful queer creators or queer creators at all, Rachel. And yeah, so for that, I'm going to give it a 12. 12 out of 37.
Wow. That's a failing grade.
Failing grade.
12. I think I liked it a little bit more than you, but I definitely came into this thinking that I was going to rate it above Saltburn, which is our only benchmark at this point. I think it will be interesting once we have a cache of movies to be like, oh, wait. I like that one way more than that one.
We reserve the right to retroactively rescore.
Yes. For this movie, I came into this thinking it was going to be something like a 24, 25. I'm leaving, and I think I'm going to rate it more like an 18 out of 37. I think it's slightly below average. I don't.
Yeah, I was.
I'm leaving feeling like my laughter at the one-liners that I thought were funny at the time don't hold up after any amount of scrutiny.
Yeah.
So what's the average of 12 and 18? 15?
12 and 18 is 15. So 15 out of 37 is our score. I want to close with my two final thoughts, and then you'll have space for final thoughts. The other point that I forgot to mention, I was just bored. I don't know how many times I move my mouse to check the timeline and be like, oh my God, I have 30 more minutes left. Yeah, I was just bored a lot of it. And second, I want to note that Saltburn had an arguably more problematic young queer character in the form of the murderous psychopath who sucks semen out of the bathtub drain and stalks his friend. And that movie was written by a cishet woman, not a gay man. And I don't know if that actor is gay or not. And in fact, the same questions that I was so critical of Bottoms for didn't even occur to me when watching Saltburn. And I think there's something of note there.
Why do you think, though?
I don't know yet. I want to think. But I did want to note, in case anyone listening was like, that feels hypocritical. And I'm like, as I was talking, I was like, yeah, that does. I don't know if it's hypocritical, but it's different. Like, definitely it's notable to me. And it's something that I do want to think about, like why the one movie prompted that reaction so strongly when the other one did not. And it's possible that it's hypocritical. I just want to think about it more.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who has the right to tell what story?
Yeah. And like, I
And
don't, cis women probably shouldn't write movies about murderous gay men. That would be my take. Like, I didn't bring it up last time, but they probably shouldn't do it.
but going back to that conversation, we talked about how his sexuality was a weapon.
Yeah, he's not presented as a gay archetype.
He's not.
He's just
Yeah.
a guy. He's a psychopath. He's a crazy guy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas this was like out the gate, we're two lesbians in high school, and we're going to tell you about our experience. And then they proceed to do very little that convinces you of anything that they said at the beginning.
Yeah. But I did just want to note that difference there. Like, I agree with you. I don't think it's an analogous situation, but I could see someone listening being like, well, it feels weird that it wouldn't come up in the other case.
My two final thoughts. One is I'm a little tired of the Fight Club trope. I looked up TV tropes to see how many places have done Fight Clubs, and it's basically been in every sitcom ever.
Yeah.
I wrote down 30 Rock, Always Sunny, The OC, Family Guy, Archer. Basically, if you have a long-running sitcom, you're going to get to a Fight Club plot point at some point.
Yeah, it's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, it's kind of boring. Sorry. It's been done.
Honestly, a self-defense club where they're like learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu would have given fodder for way more lesbian shit than just boring Fight Club.
Oh my God, I totally agree.
Having your head trapped in a leg lock by the hot girl because you're practicing BJJ. Yeah. Anyway.
That sounds hot.
Yeah, it's way hotter. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is the gayest thing in the world. I don't care who you are.
And then the other gayest thing in the world is lip syncing in your own room to Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Oh God. What a good song. That was my only thought when I watched that scene. I was like, this is a good song.
Yeah, I thought the music cues. I love paying attention to how music is used in movies, and Saltburn I thought did a really good job of setting the scene with 2000 very specific songs to make you feel like you were there. This does the opposite. I think it's set somewhere in the early 2000s. That's sort of there's no cell phones.
There's a flip phone at some point, and they're using the yellow pages.
But there's music from the 80s with the Total Eclipse of the Heart. There's a Avril Lavigne Complicated montage, which I thought was a fun song to use, which did feel like the right time. And then there's two songs that are very modern. The ending, there's two Charlie XCX songs, which is very chaotic gay energy.
Even though she's straight, right?
Yeah, but she's a queer icon.
I don't think that's possible, but okay. That's a different conversation. I know that she's beloved by queers.
Yeah.
But you're not a queer icon if you're straight.
No, you're a pop diva.
Yeah. It's a different conversation. But yes, there are some Charlie XCX songs.
And then there's a King Princess song called Pain.
I don't know who that is, but that sounds queer.
She has built herself sort of as like the first mainstream lesbian pop star, where the name King Princess comes from. I have seen her. I don't think she has the songs yet, to be honest, but I do.
Is she pre-Boy Genius?
Boy Genius was never expected to be mainstream. And that's the funny thing about calling yourself mainstream or like trying to like aim yourself for the mainstream is like if you don't make it, then it's like, well, that's awkward.
Or wasn't that there also that like that other one, the who's always wearing the rainbow colors?
Who?
Anyway, it just seems wild to say you're the first lesbian pop star. That
I may be misrepresenting her, but I know she definitely is like very squarely queer.
Do you know that her great grandparents died?
We're on the Titanic? Yes, I did. That's my favorite fact about her.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I hear your final thoughts. I like them.
So next is Bros.
Next is Bros. Billy Eichner's Bros. Next Monday at 3 p.m. PST, 6 p.m. EST, we'll be live reviewing Bros. We'll also be releasing it on our podcast, Nerdsquad.
We have to figure out how to do that.
Because this is a podcast. I know how to do it. I haven't.
Okay, great.
I'll put it out. It just means that I have to edit these audio streams at some point. And I don't know when it will happen. I think maybe when we have 5 or 6 episodes banked, That'll
Okay.
be when we kind of release it.
You can also teach me how to do it, and I can do some of them, so you don't have to do it every time.
Sure. And I'm not planning on really doing much of any real editing.
I just want to
putting
take out the
everything
part where
together.
my mic dropped.
Oh, I think people might enjoy the 2 minutes of me awkwardly trying
Oh
to
yeah.
communicate that I couldn't hear you. But anyway, this has been Nerd Squad. I'm Sarah Kaplan. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah Rose Kaplan. Sarah with no H, Rose like the flower, Kaplan, Caplan. Don't spell it like the test prep company.
Do I give my Instagram now?
Yeah.
I guess you can
Yeah.
follow me. Sure. I'm Scott. My Instagram is at Scott_YS, which is
Yes.
phonetically my last name.
You can follow
Right.
Scott for lots of fun thirst traps. And
I don't post thirst traps.
Yeah, you do.
I post mostly pictures of me at weddings.
That's true. You post a lot of pictures of you at weddings. And I
If
post.
we're gonna hire a nice photographer to take a good photo of me, I'm gonna post
fuck
it
yeah.
to me.
And I just post a random compilation of shit. I don't know why you'd follow either of us if you don't know us personally, but you can.
Have fun with that parasocial relationship.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Scott is my best friend. I'm Scott's best friend, and you are our best
You're
friend.
our best friend.
Thanks so much for listening. Tune in next time. Bye.